apologise to the member. Your time has expired.
Madam Speaker.
I call the Honourable Shane Jones.
Ordinarily, it's midnight when you hear howling. But the word howl, which is a verb, a doing word, is actually a protracted, prolonged cry of distress. That, Madam Speaker, is not a cry for what was, it's what's lying ahead. And in the context of this budget, it is difficult for our colleagues on the other side of the House to understand it because it's got such a long-term vision. They can never envision themselves being on this side of the House until the new leader of the National Party leaving Air New Zealand arrives. That's got to be at least 2029. I just want to remind the member who sat down that this is the Imprest supply bill. This is the Imprest supply bill, which actually enables us to enjoy interim spending authority until such time the magnum opus has been passed. And it's now that I have explained that technicality to my colleagues on the other side of the House. Let me focus. I hear further noises from the back. Those are the noises actually inversely related to TV1, Madam Speaker, on Friday, where the sitting member of Northland gushed enthusiastically. There was a torrent of congratulatory remarks from the National Party as to how well I'm doing in the provinces. How well I'm doing in the provinces. He better go and tell the new guy, Christopher Bishop, that he's already agreed, Madam Speaker, a lot of what's covered in this particular bill in the sense what the budget represents, that he's already conceded. But of course, Christopher Bishop will soon understand when he stands to his feet, I'm not a Maori like Wally Homaha. I'm not a guy to be bullied. I'm not a guy to be lied about. However, let me come back to transforming the economy for fear of you issuing yet another admonition in my direction. There's a lot of fear, Madam Speaker, amongst the people who wanted to tarmac New Zealand's economy into the treacherous zone of climate change danger. Now, we, Madam Speaker, have taken a more balanced and fair approach, which is why the interim authority that we seek is necessary, because as a consequence of this morning, we've already started in terms of projects, employing people, rolling out the strategy for Kiwi Rail. Of course, the rail vision, Madam Speaker, is not only in the regions. We are redressing the neglect in Auckland. And today, Mr Twyford spoke about something that I do agree with, actually, in Auckland, which is providing another track to cope with the congestion. But in relation to where is rail in this budget and going forward going to stand, it gives New Zealand businesses, investors, both domestic and foreign, a new opportunity to create both improved freight strategies but tourism as well. Now, of course, the other side of the House aren't interested in reducing emissions. They are creating them. But the pollution isn't to the climate, the pollution is to the body politic. Now, of course, there's a lot of cynicism expressed on the other side of the House about our extension services for agriculture. Now, we know that the farmers, we know that agribusiness leaders do have a lot of anxiety about the future. And I have agreed to meet with the Shady Group, and I've said, come to the office and talk to me about your problems pertaining to the conversion of farmland into trees. I have acknowledged that it's physically impossible for them to channel Nathan Guy, because that would be a public health warning. So I look forward to them coming, working constructively, Madam Speaker, on the projects currently covered in the budget and in the interim authority we are seeking and passing as we wend our way through this process. But forestry has an incredibly important role to play, not only in biodiversity, not only in catchment consolidation, not only in employment and exports, but providing an option to buy time while the heavy emitters, the heavy industry, seek ways to invest in science, technology and improvements to their business in the context of our new climate change challenges. Now, of course, research and technology, research and development is something that our party regards as a key enabler, and we're looking forward as the farmers come forward and say, OK, we know that we're being dragged along on a journey. We've mucked around. We tried to destroy Peter Hodgson in the days of Helen Clark. We knew we'd get a free pass from the John Key government. I shouldn't mention the former Prime Minister's name. I might receive the ire of my own leader. I'll leave him and Mr Key to their unfinished business. But if we don't have focused research and technology investment in areas such as gene editing, very difficult, Madam Speaker, to see where the farming community, where the agribusiness community is going to find the solution. So I look forward to working with them. There's considerable scope in that regard. Of course, I should finish, as would be required of me, to talk about the Provincial Growth Fund. Now, just to remind, Madam Speaker, the tiny group of New Zealanders who may have not heard me speaking about the fund in the past. The fund is dedicated over a three-year period to turn around the fortunes of the provinces by identifying deserving projects in terms of infrastructure. And of course, recently we opened the Kerikeri Airport, Māori language mishaps aside. And then we have proceeded, Madam Speaker, to invest in enablers within the agribusiness sector because we like water storage. Water storage is very important for the rural economy, and Hawke's Bay has enjoyed our attention in that regard. And then there are specific injections of equity. I tried unsuccessfully, Madam Speaker, on behalf of the government to do something with Westland Dairy. I didn't know that Westland Dairy was going through a process of being offloaded, but I'm sure others will talk about that at another time. But the most important thing is that the Provincial Growth Fund is going into territory that the earlier government was unwilling to invest money in. They were prepared to take the money that we have used and are recycling into deserving projects, and they were going to give it away in tax cuts. And those tax cuts were going to benefit a tiny minority of New Zealanders, whereas our focus, quite frankly, is boosting equity in the provinces. And an area that equity is now coming to pass is in digital connectivity. Now, there's one thing I'll say, Madam Speaker, Stephen Joyce, despite what the Minister of Finance might say about him, there's one area, he may not have come up with this, that did work out well, and that was the investment in digital connectivity. An area, however, that has been overlooked is those particular spots around rural New Zealand that have not been able to attract attention. Therefore, Madam Speaker, the significant amount of money that we've dedicated, nigh on $80 to $100 million, dedicated through the Provincial Growth Fund, will provide an opportunity to create regional digital hubs, continue to connect those areas where there's black spots, where ordinary things that we take for granted in this House are denied our rural folk because we haven't been able to attend to those areas of neglect. And on the Māori side, obviously I'm very interested in this, is digitising the connections with marae, to bring the young people back to the marae, so the marae represents a modern opportunity for them not only to celebrate identity, but to remain connected all around the world. Now, of course, I accept that as more marae are connected, then there's going to be an increased awareness about how important security is, because a lot of the marae are in neglected areas. But that's a specific case where we're doing things at the big end of town with the agricultural sector. We're doing things at the largest end of town, Madam Speaker, with infrastructure and Kiwi Rail, and we have not forgotten about the people in the Kumara Garden, down in the weeds and seeds. And when you have a government that seeks to join all of those elements together, then you have sustainable economic development. You don't have this self-induced feeding frenzy that we're seeing in our largest bank. You don't have that culture of entitlement which we're seeing in the ANZ, our largest bank. I'm sure the Governor of the Reserve Bank will have more to say about that, and hopefully he penalises the directors, not unlike those who are paraded around believing their corporate virtue is beyond cavil. So watch this space. I'm sure there's bad news on the way for them. Thank you very much,
Kia ora.
Madam Speaker.
Speaker.
I call the Right Honourable David Carter.
Madam Speaker, it's a pleasure for me to take a call in the appropriations